Good morning, Clearbranch kids. As you may remember, this month we're learning all about compassion. So, what is compassion? Well, compassion is not just caring about someone, but it's caring about them enough to actually do something about their needs. And as we've seen from our first two lessons this month, what better example? Where can we get better stories of examples of compassion than straight from Jesus? So, today's story comes from the book of Mark. And in chapter 10 of Mark, Mark is talking to us about a journey that Jesus took, he and his disciples, to Jerusalem. In fact, it was his last journey to Jerusalem before he died. And as they traveled, they were passing through the city of Jericho. And as usual, they weren't alone. Like always, they were followed by a large crowd of people. So as they traveled, people were crowding the streets, trying to see Jesus. And just up ahead, there was a blind man whose name was Bartimaeus, he spent most of his time actually in that very spot, hoping that people would take pity on him and give him money and food so that he could eat. But that day was a little bit different. Even though Bartimaeus couldn't see what was going on around him, he had certainly heard the rumblings in the crowd and knew what was about to happen. He had heard them talking all about Jesus, about this man who claimed to be the Son of God and who had been traveling around teaching and performing miracles. And he knew that Jesus was going to pass right by where he sat very soon. Now, sure enough, as they drew closer, Bartimaeus could hear the excitement in the crowd as Jesus and his disciples were getting close. And Bartimaeus saw his chance, and he took it. As Jesus got closer, he shouted out as loud as he could, trying to be heard over the crowd, and he asked for Jesus to have mercy on him. Now, people around him told the blind man to be quiet, to stop bothering Jesus, but Bartimaeus just ignored them. He shouted louder and louder, begging Jesus to have mercy on him. Now, even though Jesus was on his way to someplace in particular, and even though he was surrounded by a noisy crowd, Jesus stopped and he listened. And then Jesus asked some people close by to call for Bartimaeus and to bring him over closer to him. Well, as the crowd told Bartimaeus that Jesus was calling for him, he got up as quickly as he could and he made his way over and stood in front of Jesus. When Jesus saw the blind man, he asked Bartimaeus, "What do you want from me?" And Bartimaeus told him, "I just want to be able to see." Remember, Bartimaeus had heard all about Jesus, how he had performed miracles and healed people, and Bartimaeus believed in his heart that Jesus could heal him too. Well, sure enough, Jesus looked right at Bartimaeus and he told him that his faith had healed him. And immediately, Bartimaeus could see. He celebrated by following Jesus further on down the road. Can you imagine how exciting it must have been for all the people gathered that day to see that? Guys, I can't believe that there was anybody busier and more sought after than Jesus was during his ministry. But Jesus always made a point to show love and compassion to others, no matter how busy he might be, no matter what he had going on. And if Jesus can do that, we can do that too. With God's help, we can follow the example that Jesus gave us of how to treat people around us. And that's our bottom line this week. We can make time to help others.